Okay, good morning. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, good.
morning.
Thank you. Good morning. So, well, this isn't how I expected our first day of class to start, I can tell you that. But, and I'm always afraid when they said that we're going to have connect virtually, I thought, well, there goes the end of every snow day we're ever going to have. So, but we're here and we can get some things done today. And this is how I've lectured for the past 2 years, and I'm really looking forward to being on the ground, but such as it is. Anyway, this is AP1, and this is a class you're taking because you're interested in healthcare careers. Some of you are focused on nursing, some are going to be focused on radiology, physical therapy, pre-pharmacy, what else? Surge tech, maybe, things like that. You know, if I've missed one, I'm sorry, but there are a lot now. Well, this is a, this class, I will say my class, has a very good record of getting people into the various healthcare programs, as long as you do well in this class and then do well in AP2. Most of my A and B, I should say all my A students and most of my B students get into the nursing program. There are 4 students over at ETSU right now in the radiology program. All 4 are mine. I've sent a lot to Johnson City's ETSU, the ETSU program up there. Quite a few have gone to the Surge Tech program. So I've got a, like I said, I'm rather pleased with the record we've got in placing people in whatever kind of healthcare field they're looking at. If you wonder what I'm doing as people enter the class, I'm busy marking down your attendance. So now the other side of the coin, though, is this is a hard class. This is not going to be an easy class. This is if you're going into a healthcare field, this is going to be your most important class of all your coursework. You know, I don't care what they tell you in psychology or in English or whatever else. Those classes aren't going to get you into the nursing program or radiology. I'll just say nursing program. I'll cover it all then. They're not going to get you into the healthcare program you want. That's a good, better way of saying it. They're going to help your GPA, but they're not going to get you in what you need. So this is a class you got to pay attention to. This is a class you got to work in. Now, I've tried to make it as, I should say, I'll say painless, but it will be a little bit painful as possible. We have gone to great lengths to make sure that your book is free. Nobody should pay $300 for a textbook, which is why we have the free book, which is why I recommend that you get if you want a hard copy of a textbook, why I recommend you go buy a used one for $10 at McKay's in Knoxville or on Amazon or eBay, because they're all the same. All the good ones are identical. Even the chapters run along here. So you're going to have, we got you a free book. All of the content that you need is going to be found in eLearn. All the PowerPoints, all the printouts of the PowerPoints. And, you know, I made the printouts PDFs so you won't kill your printer trying to print out the PowerPoints ahead of time. That's, you know, I lecture off my PowerPoints so that I don't read them to you if you can read, but I use those as starting points, and then you can take notes on the PDF. The lab is the same way. There is no lab book. I think I've answered that for a number of people. I know that. But there's no lab book. Everything you need for lab is found in the eLearn content. Lab this afternoon, which I hadn't planned on being online, but I'll go. What we'll do today in lab are look at the view the PowerPoints for the various areas we're going to cover. So we won't have any hands-on until next week, assuming it doesn't snow next week either. So we've tried to make this, give you everything you need to succeed here. Now, a couple of things I want to point out before I even talk about the class. I've been teaching this class for 19 years now at Walter State. And the students that succeed have a much better track record of success if they come together in study groups and work together, teach each other material and content. That seems to work so well, because study groups that form in AP1 stick together in AP2 and usually stick together in nursing and radiology, and because you're going to, it helps when you can teach it to each other. And these groups will go together in a group, in a cluster, all through their coursework, both through AP1 and 2, through micro, through nursing or radiology or surg tech. They'll study in groups, and it works really well because it has to do with how you retain information. When you read something, you retain it in one place in your brain. When you write it down, you replace it in another place, another portion of your brain. When you teach it to somebody, you put it into a third place. And the more ways that you can reinforce that information, the more likely you are to retain it. And teaching it to each other is a really good way of retaining information. And if you can't get into a study group, teach it to your dog, or teach it to your kids if you have children. But dog won't get too excited about it, I guess. But it works by reinforcing it and then thinking of things as you go. And I'll tell you, like I said, I've taught this class for 19 years. And every time I teach it, I still have insights that I never thought of before. Because teaching it makes you draw on all different parts of the brain and allows you to put it together and to give you a comprehensive view of the topic. So now I will tell you that the first couple chapters are going to be boring as all get out. And you're going to have to struggle with it. I'm going to be completely honest with you, because the second chapter we cover is going to be all about chemistry. Chemistry, why are we looking at chemistry? Well, because we function off of our biological systems. Our biological systems depend on chemical reactions, but it is boring. That's the nicest way I can say it. But we'll get through it. And the second unit is not going to be a whole lot better either. But once we get past the first 2 units, then things get really interesting. We study how our bones work. We study the makeup of our muscles and how our muscles function. And then we get into the brain and nervous system. The last 4 chapters of the course deal with the brain, the spinal cord, the nervous system, memory and actions and behavior and stuff like that. So I like to think we finish up the course on a really positive, a really good note. And that leads us into AP2. AP2 is all about organ systems. We start out with endocrine and we end up with respiration. And we start looking at things that go wrong, the pathology behind disease and injury. Because I always like to say that healthy patients are boring patients because there's nothing wrong with them. You're just like, yeah, okay, you feel good, you look good, okay. But it's the things that go wrong in our bodies that give you the challenge, that make you work. And so we'll spend a lot of time, the last half of this class and all of AP2 looking at case studies, for example. So you'll come out pretty well prepared. And I will tell you, and not to sound like I'm really bragging about it, but I have had so many students come back from nursing, for example, and tell me they were so glad we studied, went through those case studies because it helped them out so much in their advanced courses. So again, it's how you approach it, and how I like to give you a real flavor of what's going on. So the course itself is divided up into 5 units. We have two chapters per unit. Unit 1, for example, is the introduction and chemistry. Unit 2 is cells and metabolism. 3 is bones and muscles. 4 is nervous system, brain and spinal cord. And 5 is the peripheral nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So you'll have 5 unit tests. Each test is worth 100 points. The 5 exams make up 90% of your lecture grade. The final exam is the last 10% of your course grade. You know, it's theoretically possible for a person to score so high, you know, score 100% in every exam and not have to take the final. It's never happened, but it's theoretically possible because the grading scale is 90% and above is an A, and 80 to 89 is a B, 70 to 79 is a C, and so on. So it's a pretty straightforward point system here. There's nothing special about it, but each test is you know, worth 100 is 100 points. Like I said, it's whatever the, you know, whatever percentage of 90% that is. I can't do the math in my head, but so you're going to want to do well in the exams. If you are going to take this class virtual for the whole semester, you can take you'll take the exam, lecture exams online. If you're going to come to class, you'll take it in the classroom. That option is yours, and that's something else to make. I wanted to make perfectly clear about this hybrid format is that you have the option every day whether to come to class or Zoom the class, because you're going to hear the same thing, not from my office, hopefully at home, but from the classroom. You're going to hear the same thing on Zoom as you would hear in the classroom. So you can have the choice of, you know, coming in or, you know, especially if you live in Sevierville, but if you don't, that's fine. You can Zoom every class. That's how we've set it up. The final exam, I would prefer that you take that on the ground somewhere. If you live in Sevierville, you can come in and take it in the classroom. If you live somewhere else, maybe I can. Yeah, we'll probably make arrangements, but you know, the last option, of course, is to let you take the exam, you know, online. So we'll discuss that when we get closer to it. Let's see what else. There's no point in talking about fire drills or things like that since we're all at home today. So since I said about the grading scale, oh, there is something else. I'm allowed by my division to offer extra credit. Not a lot of extra credit. Now, what I've done is I have set up small study areas with quizzes called soft chalks. You may be familiar with the soft chalk. And some of those are for credit and some aren't. Now, the ones that aren't, they're all there for your benefit. You know, it's like like a quiz and review it and stuff like that. But there are 4 of them that you get credit for, and they're each worth 5 points. And those 5 that totals up to 20 extra points that can be added directly to your final score. Now that's the way that the grading is set up is that all the points add up. You know, so you get a 90 in your first test and a 90 in your second test and a 90 in your third test. Well, so far you've got 270 points out of, I think, about 600 points. So if you keep getting 90s, you're going to get an A. But you know, suppose you're a little bit short. Well, those extra 20 points get added into the total, you know, and it boosts you over. If you're at let's see, what would be if you're at 490 points and you need to get or let's see, you're at 500 points and you need to get to 520 for an A, and I think that's close enough on that. Those extra 20 points would help you. You don't have to do them. They're not required. The soft chalks are not required. They're just there for your benefit. But 4 of them are there to give you extra credit points if you want to do it. So that's, I'm sure that I'll have to explain that again because I think I got myself confused in that one. Anyway, how do we do the exams? Well, I said we're going to do them on ground or online. Now, I don't have a schedule for the exams because I never know when we're going to get done with a unit. Well, because every class goes at its own pace. You know, some days you may have lots of questions, and I love questions, even if it slows me down. That's fine. I'd rather answer the questions than lecture, but well, sort of. And if you want to play stump the professor, I'm game for that too. So, and I'll be the first to admit what I don't know. But when we do get a unit done, then we'll set a date, usually a week after I get, if we finish class on the 10th of the month, finish the unit on the 10th of the month, then I'll set the test for a week later, give you a week to get ready for it. Same thing applies to the online. If you're trying to take it online, they'll open up that day and you can take it that day. So, because, in the past, I tried to put dates down and tried to force my lecture to hit those dates, and it doesn't work because we just go, some days we make a lot of progress and some days we don't. So we just go in the schedule that the class, creates as we go along. And it's worked ever since I've done it that way. Now, lab's a little bit different, and I'll talk more about that this afternoon. But in lab, we have set things that happen every week. And so we can cover those areas in one session. So let's see, what else? Now, when we do get into class, we are in 217. If you're on the ground, we're in 217 in Maples Marshall Hall. Now, 217 is a very large classroom. And if you're concerned about social distancing, it has a seating capacity of 55 students, and we only have 25 in the class. You can spread out as far as you want. When we get into class, if you want to bring something along to drink, that's fine. If you want to bring along something to eat and it's not noisy, that's fine. I'm not going to say anything about it. When you see me in class, I'll probably have a 30-ounce cup of coffee I'm drinking anyway. So, because I can't go through the whole period without getting something to drink. When we go into labs usually don't allow us to eat anything or drink anything because of the nature of what we do. Now, there will be many labs where it won't matter because it's what we call a dry lab, and I'll talk more about that later on. But generally, I'm not going to get too upset if you eat or drink quietly in the classroom. Now, I did have a student a number of years ago that brought in a whole pizza, a large whole pizza, and proceeded to eat it by herself in the class. Now, that was, I thought that was, I didn't get upset by it other than the fact that she was making all of us hungry and she didn't offer to share, but that's a whole other story. But that's true story. True story, she did that. There was another time where someone brought in a whole bag of M&Ms, opened the bag, and they all spilled out on the floor, and it was a hard surface floor, and it rattled for a long time. Well, it happens. Things like that happen, just smile and keep on going because you're not going to be able to make that sound go away while it's happening. So it'll be, it should be I try to keep a pretty relaxed environment in there, but we will work very hard. Now let's see, what else? I don't think what else I have to cover. Now the syllabus, this is an important point. The syllabus is listed in the content in eLearn, and most of it's pretty dry, cut and dry. I've already covered a lot of the points there. But the thing to remember is the syllabus is your contract. It's a contract between me and you and me. It means I can't change the testing. I can't change the grades on the testing. I can't say, well, this test is now worth 200 points, or we're going to skip a chapter. I can't do that. It tells you exactly what we're going to do. It doesn't tell you when we're going to do it, but it does tell you exactly what to expect in the course. It covers the 5 exams. It covers the final exam. It even covers the extra credit. So, and it has the usual stuff about attendance and behavior in class and things like that. You know, it tells us what to do, you know, on a snow day, for example. And this we are in new territory now because we've never done this before. We've had a snow day, and the campus is closed, and we did everything virtual. So we'll see how that pans out as it goes along. Anyway, anybody have any questions on anything? Okay. It's, you know, and if you do have questions, especially when we get into content. Oh, here we go. Since we did not have class yesterday, just wait till next week. If you're okay, if you are in the virtual lab on Mondays, don't worry about coming to class today. You'll get your virtual lab on Monday. This works out very well because the Monday lab starts a week behind. Because if you're in the Monday lab, your lab starts a week behind the Tuesday lab, just because of the nature of the holiday. It's always been like that. For every year, every semester, every spring semester I've ever taught, there's always a lab scheduled on Monday, and the first Monday of the class is a holiday. And that lab is always behind. Well, since it's a virtual lab, we're not tied to the schedule as much as the on-ground class is. The virtual lab won't have to take a day for the lab exams. The lab exams will open up and stay open to, you know, give them time to take it. So no, just come to lab next week and you'll be fine. So, and I'll explain more about that to the virtual class on Monday. So, hope that answered your question. Now let's see, any other questions? That was a good question. You know, so, okay, good. So feel free to ask me any question you'd like. Now I'm gonna, when we get into lecture on ground, one of the things that has been difficult when we were off, you know, because of the pandemic, Zooming because of the pandemic, was that we didn't have access to a lot of the equipment and supplies for demonstrations. That's changed now, and I had some great things set up for today, which you'll see on Thursday, hopefully. But I have a very nice camera that I'll be able to use in the classroom to show you demonstrations, and I got some great videos which I think are going to show up that I can share through Zoom for you. So I'm really looking forward to trying that out. You know, one of the things that we have definitely learned how to use Zoom as our means of content delivery. 2 years ago, the first time we tried Zoom, the whole academic community around the country was trying to use Zoom at the same time, and we crashed Zoom. I don't know if any of you were around 2 years ago, but the very first day of class, it was in the fall of 2020, Zoom died. Zoom crashed because of everybody trying to get in. We've gotten a lot better since then, and so has Zoom. Okay, for lab, if you are in the Tuesday lab, then you go only on Tuesdays. If you, and this is one thing I will do, if you miss your Tuesday lab, then since we don't have any other AP1 labs for you to make it up with, you do have the option of attending that lab on the following Monday online. I can send you the link for the Zoom link for the Monday virtual lab. If you know you're going to have to miss Tuesday, a particular Tuesday, and you want to make it up, and since the Monday lab is going to be a week behind, you can go to the Monday lab. The other thing is that I record all the lectures. I record all the classes, and then I post them into YouTube. When we get done today, I'll go ahead and load this into YouTube, and I'll send you the link so you can go right to it. So all the lectures get recorded, all the lectures get posted. Same with the labs. So even if you miss the lab, you can still watch it and enjoy it vicariously, I guess. So, so labs are only 1 day a week. Lectures are 2 days a week. So that was a long answer to a short question. So anyway, I hope that helped. And let's see. Other questions? Now, I will tell you that lecture will go the full time. It will get done at 12:30 or thereabouts, and lab is supposed to go to 3:45, but it won't. Usually we get done to 2:30. It doesn't take that long to go through all the content, but we have extra time in case we need it. Now, you'll take advantage of that extra time when we get into the bones and muscles. But for right now, you know, a lot of the labs are very short. AP2 labs are even short. Most of the AP2 labs get done in an hour, except when we get into dissection. So, and let's see, anything else I should cover? Can't think. Well, I'm sure I'm forgetting something, and I'll probably be able to remember it between now and Thursday. So, having said that, let me go into. I'm going to share my screen and open up PowerPoints, and hopefully you should all see this. Get rid of me. Okay, everybody should see the first slide. It says Chapter 1, Introduction to the Human Body.
Yep, I can see it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so here we are. This is Chapter 1. Every anatomy and physiology textbook, their Chapter 1s are all the same. They go through the discussion you're going to hear today. The human body hasn't changed in 6,000 years in its design. Some names may have changed over the time as far as structures go, but it's, you know, older textbooks may have an older name, but the structures haven't changed. So that's why I say a book that's 15 years old is still a good textbook, because it still covers everything you need. So anyway, let's get started. Okay. So we're going to talk about, the first thing we'll talk about is terms and terminology. Because one of the things about anatomy and physiology is it's not good enough to say over there, or that side, or up or down. We have to be a little more precise, you know, because mistakes happen. I mean, we've all heard stories or read about examples where someone goes into the hospital to have surgery, to have their left kidney taken out because it's failing, or it's cancerous, and then it's discovered that the right kidney was taken out by accident. Some people have gone so far as to use a Sharpie and write instructions on their own body for the surgeon to see, you know, you're taking out my gallbladder, not my appendix, or something. You know, those are all anecdotal stories, but they're true. So it's important that we use the same terminology all the way through. Now we're, you know, in this slide here, you can see this is from one of the old Frankenstein movies back in the 1930s. But why I use this, not because I like old science fiction movies and stuff like that, or monster movies, which I do, but Dr. Frankenstein here is saying it's alive. He's not saying he's alive. He's not saying she's alive. He's saying it's alive. Because as far as he was concerned, the monster wasn't it. So he was using the correct terminology. Yeah. And terminology is very, very important to us, because we have to use terms like medial and lateral and frontal and sagittal. So, and we use these when we look at the structure of our bodies. Anatomy is the study of structure. Our structure in our bodies is very, very specific. You know, the shape of the various structures allow them to complete their function. We have a four-chambered heart. Why do we have a four-chambered heart? Because it has to pump blood to two different circuits in the body, to the lungs and to the whole, what we call the systemic circuit. So the structure of the heart is designed to do that. Physiology is how all these parts work together. Structure is anatomy. How does your arm, how can you turn your arm so that your hand rotates around a doorknob? You ever think about, I'm sure, it's like, this is, it sounds really boring, but think about it. You open a door, you turn the doorknob. Well, the process of turning that doorknob is pretty complex. And yet our forearm is designed so that we can rotate the two bones of the lower arm around the bone of the upper arm in such a way that we can grasp the handle and turn it. The anatomy of our hand and arm allow us to do that particular function. So physiology is function. How do things work? Why does our heart beat 70 times a minute? And why do we have two different pathways out of the heart, one to the lungs and one to the rest of the body? These are very specific functions in here. Now, when we look at anatomy, there are a lot of subdivisions with dealing with anatomy. Gross anatomy, that's us. Not that we're gross, but our gross anatomy is the overall picture, what we call macroscopic function or structures. So we look at ourselves, we look at our hands and arms and legs, we look at ourselves in the mirror. We have this large body that we look at, that we're made up of, all these different parts coming together. Macroscopic anatomy. We look at the hands, we look at our arms, we can look at our feet, we can see our face in the mirror, we look at our abdomen, we look at our legs. These are all macroscopic functions, structures. We see, you bruise your leg, you can see the bruise, that's visible. You break a finger, that's visible. These are, you can look at the surface and see things that have happened in the body. We can see some of our internal anatomy underneath our skin. We can see our muscles, for example. We can feel the edges of some of our bones. If you've ever bumped your shin bone, I'll use that term for right now. If you've ever bumped your shin bone and you know how painful it is, you know that there is a very sharp edge of the prominent bone in your lower leg, that is the edge of what we call the shin bone. It's not really, it's actually our tibia, but there's a very sharp edge there. So you can feel bones underneath our skin. You can feel when things are broken. If you've ever had a fracture, and the bone is displaced, you can feel it, you can see it. If it's penetrating through the skin, you can really see it. So these are all large structures that we can observe. And when you're talking to your patients and you're looking at your patients, you can see things like, do they look pale? Do they look flushed? Do they, are there mucous membranes? Are their lips slightly blue? Or their nail beds slightly blue? Skin color doesn't really matter because we're all the same underneath there. I mean, once we get below the surface of the skin, the structures are identical. But there are some things that we can tell on the surface of the skin that are the same for everybody. If you want a quick and dirty way to know if a person is cyanotic, meaning not getting enough oxygen, look at the fingernail beds. Fingernail beds in everybody, regardless of skin color, are pink because of the presence of oxygen in the blood. If they start looking bluish, it's an indicator that there's not enough oxygen going through the body. The same with the lips, especially the inside lining of the lips. They're going to be bluish. We use the term cyanotic because cyan is a term for blue. So the term cyanotic indicates not enough oxygen. Little things like that when you're dealing with your patients. What physical changes are occurring here? Microscopic anatomy deals with things that we have to use a microscope for. And the term cytology is the study of cells. These are cells down here in the lower right-hand side in the blue square. Those are cheek cells. Those are cells, very simple flat cell that line the inside of our mouth, and as well as lining every exposed surface in our body, including our digestive system and our reproductive system and stuff like that. We look at cells, we can look and see if the cells are healthy or if they are cancerous or if they are infected or inflamed. Histology is the study of tissues. So cells come together to form tissues. Large clusters of cells create tissues like muscle tissue or nervous tissue. This is this purple structure down here is a nerve cell. This is called a neuron, and these little purple things here are called glial cells. They're the supporting cells, but this is nervous tissue here. So it's because there's two different types of cells in this picture: the big neuron and the little tiny glial cells. Tissues are clusters of cells working together. In physiology, we look and see how things work. We look and see how does the heart work? How does the heart work? How does the kidney function in filtering our blood? How do we swallow? This is an image here of an individual eating something. I think it's a piece of fruit, I'm not certain. And seeing the mechanisms. It's a very elegant little mechanism here that occurs when we swallow, because you'll see when the food goes down behind the tongue, the airway, which is down here in the front of the throat, closes so that the esophagus can open. And when the esophagus is closed, the airway is open. That's a pretty sophisticated process here to make sure we don't aspirate, in other words, suck food or water into our lungs. So most of our organ systems function electrically. We actually are electrically charged. We have a charge in our bodies somewhere between -70 and -90 millivolts. And so the ability to have muscles contract or nerves to work depend on electrical signals that travel through our bodies. The ability of the heart to pump blood depends on electrical signals that pass through the heart in a very sophisticated, and I said that twice, in a very unique and repetitive sequence in here. And when that sequence is disrupted, we can see that, we can measure that sequence. We've seen EKGs and heart monitors and stuff like that. We can look at that and say, oh, well, there's what's wrong with the heart. So now, to understand physiology, we have to understand how electrical currents are generated in the body, how they're sent. We have to understand pressure, particularly in breathing. Why do our lungs expand and relax to allow air to come in and out? We have to understand chemistry. We have to understand what triggers us to breathe faster when we exercise. Now, and you're going to hear me say this a lot over the next 15 weeks. The reason that we breathe faster during exercise is not to get more oxygen, because we've got plenty of oxygen in our blood. We know every pass through our body only uses up 20% of the available oxygen. So we've got lots of oxygen there. The reason we breathe faster during exercise is not to get more oxygen. That's a nice side benefit because we're breathing faster, but it's to get rid of carbon dioxide. Because the more energy that we burn to exercise, the more carbon dioxide we generate, the stuff that we're breathing out. And so the more of that we make, the faster we breathe to get rid of it. So that's based on chemistry. So when we study A&P, we have to understand all these chemical processes, we have to understand electrical processes, and we have to understand pressure and things like that, and movement. And don't worry, I'm not throwing it all into at one time. We're going to go through this nice and carefully. So anatomy, we have to be able to understand terms. We have to be able to understand what lateral and medial means, and not just left and right, but lateral and medial means, and top and bottom, superior and inferior, a little more precise terms. So we're going to be able to know how to manipulate and find locations in our bodies based on the anatomy. For example, you ever go to your physician, healthcare provider, and they say, well, you've got strep throat, and I'm going to give you some antibiotics. I'm going to give you an injection, and I'm going to give you some oral medication. So the injection, if you ever had antibiotic injections, usually end up in your hip. Now, they don't go into your butt because there's a real large nerve directly in line with your butt, the gluteus maximus, okay? And if you inject your syringe, you stick your syringe into the gluteus maximus and it hits that very large nerve. That nerve is about the size of your thumb. It's a very long nerve, runs all the way down to your big toe. That's a whole new experience in pain for your patient. So when you get an injection in your hip, it's actually on the side of your hip. It's in a muscle known as the gluteus medius. It's a muscle on the away from the gluteus maximus. Now, because everybody, has heard the term gluteus maximus. That's or one of my students years ago said, well, that's the butt muscle. So, and yeah, it is. Okay, so it's the butt muscle, but there's a one right next to it, a little closer to your front, that we actually get the injection and so you won't hit that nerve. So little things like that, knowing where to give an injection, knowing where to listen to the heart with a stethoscope, knowing the position of bones when you're taking an x-ray. All these things you have to be able to identify. Okay. Now, fortunately for us, our bodies exhibit what is known as, well, they're complementary. Structure and function are complementary. The structure of an organ enables it to do its job. The flow of blood through our kidneys, for example, we filter blood through our kidneys 60 times a day. We filter blood coming in under higher pressure at the top of the kidney, and as we get near the base of the kidney, the pressure is low as we've literally pushed out the waste products we want to get rid of. The structure of the heart, I'll go back to the heart one more time. The structure of the heart is designed to receive blood on its top two chambers and pump blood on its bottom chambers. That's how it works. The structure of the heart is designed for its function. The heart functions as a left side and a right side heart, two separate pumps. Our lungs are extraordinarily thin. They are, imagine single ply wet toilet paper, and that's somewhat like the thickness of the lining of the lungs, so that air can move without any effort from the lungs into our blood. So the structure enables it to complete its function. So structure and function are complementary to each other. So the structure dictates what the function is, or dictates how the function is going to work. Oops, didn't press that. Let me. Come on. There we go. Now, the human body is made up of billions of cells. And we use this chart here, and I'm telling you, this is not a, no one's, I seriously doubt if anybody's ever going to come up to you in a healthcare setting years from now and say, so what part of the pyramid of the human body does the bladder come in on? It's not going to happen. The whole purpose of this is to show you that we can start out at the level of the atom. Hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms form water. That gives us a molecule. We go from simple atoms all the way down to us. As we get more and more complex, as we get larger and more complex and more complicated, and more functions flying in here, and everything reaches its point when it comes together to give us a whole body. So we go from the simplest to the most complex. Now, the organization, as I said, starts out at the chemical level: atoms, molecules, and organelles. Organelles are little structures inside cells that function as organs, but they're very, very tiny. At the cellular level, we have a single cell, which is a pretty complex structure to begin with. A cell is the smallest unit of life. And you'll hear me talk about that again when we get into chapter 3. Cells are the smallest unit of life. Cells can only come from other cells. When we group cells together, we form a tissue. Like nervous tissue made up of nerve cells. Human blood. Blood is a tissue made up of red cells and white cells. At the organ level, we have different types of tissues working together. Like the heart is made up of muscle tissue. It's made up of nerve tissue. It's made up of what we call connective tissue. At the organ system level, we bring organs together. So the heart works in conjunction with the lungs, because the role of the heart is to pump blood to the lungs, to pick up oxygen, and to bring that blood back to the heart and then pump it out to the body. So now we have, we're using the cardiovascular system, the heart and the blood vessels, as well as the respiratory system, which brings air into the body. And so we have, we're using systems together. Now we put all the systems together into one whole, that gives us us. In our bodies, we have 11 different systems. The integumentary system is the skin. The skin is the largest organ found on the body. It's always a trick question with somebody, what's the largest organ in the body? Some people say the brain, the liver, or whatever, but it's the skin. Because the skin's an organ. The skin is designed to protect us from infection. It keeps us hot, keeps us warm on a cold day and cool on a hot day. It protects the underlying tissue. It makes vitamin D for us. Sunlight on our skin makes vitamin D. And vitamin D is necessary for our bones. It allows us to sweat when we have to. It allows us to, our skin releases oil, which not only lubricates our skin, but also kills bacteria. And it overlies us at the underlying structures. Now, some of these underlying structures include bone. The skeletal system is designed for movement. Obviously, we can't move very well without our bones. It's designed to protect our organs. Our skull protects our brain. The ribs protect our lungs. The spinal cord is protected inside the spinal column. So we protect organs here. We hold them up. We attach all of our muscles to, or most of our muscles, to our bones for movement. We also make blood cells in our bones. Bone is living tissue. Our skeleton is alive. It's living tissue. We make blood cells. White cells and red cells are made in the middle of our bones. And we store calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, things like that in our bones also. So it's a great source of certain minerals. And the whole idea of movement is simply muscles use our bones as a lever. Muscles aren't strong enough to do everything they want to do, but when they pull on a bone, then they amplify their strength, tremendously. Muscles, lots of muscles in the body. Not as many as bones. There are 206 bones in the human body, and you're going to learn them all between now and the end of the semester. You really will, and it won't be. It is painless. Trust me, I've done this a lot. Muscles. There are only about 60 muscles we have to learn in here. Muscles allow us to move. They allow us to show expression. Many of our facial muscles are only there to show our feelings. Our muscles allow us to maintain our posture, to stand upright or to sit upright, and they generate body heat. Our body heat comes from the release of energy at the cellular level when we're busy burning glucose, burning sugar to get energy. Most of that energy is coming off as heat, and that maintains a constant body temperature for us. Now, our nervous system helps to control our muscles, tells our muscles when to contract and when not to contract. Some of the muscles, some we control voluntarily. We call that voluntary muscle or skeletal muscle. Some muscles are controlled involuntary through involuntary mechanisms. Nervous system does it all. It is a very rapid response system. To us, it appears instantaneous. It's measurable, the time lag, but for us, it's instantaneous. Nervous system is the brain, the spinal cord, and all of the nerves that feed into and out of the brain and spinal cord, like the optic nerve or the auditory nerve. Or touch or pressure or pain. Those are all going to be feeding information in through nerves. It is a rapid response system. It tells us to do something. You hear a noise, you turn your head in the direction of the noise. You put your hand down on something hot, you yank your hand back. It is one of two control systems in our bodies, and this is the fast one. This is the fast control system. I'll do endocrine first because that's the other control system. It works with the nervous system. The endocrine system, though, is the slow control system. It's made up of a series of glands. The pineal gland, which is a little gland that dangles inside your brain that controls when we get sleepy, our day-night cycles. The pituitary gland, the master gland of the body, the thyroid gland in your throat, the thymus gland, the adrenal gland, the pancreas, the ovaries and testes. We're familiar with many of these already. They release a chemical messenger known as a hormone. And these hormones control activities in our body, but at a slower rate than the nervous system does. The nervous system is the rapid control system. The endocrine system is the slower control system. If you eat a donut before you came to class this morning, well, that donut, you process it, and the sugar in the donut went into your blood because everything we eat goes into our blood. Everything we eat, everything we drink ends up in our blood. And it caused our blood sugar to go up a little bit. Well, if the blood sugar went up too high, then we release a hormone called insulin to bring it back down. You've all heard of insulin. Okay, so we bring our blood sugar back down to normal using insulin. But that whole process takes about a half an hour for that to happen. It's not instantaneous. So it's a slower mechanism, but its effect is longer lasting because some hormone actions will last for years. A female becomes fertile at about 8, 12, somewhere in there, 13, and starts ovulating and having her period. And she'll continue to do that until she's in her 50s or later. And that's controlled by hormones. It's a 40 or 50-year process of control. Males start producing testosterone somewhere around the same age level, when they hit puberty. and they're going to produce testosterone the day they die, and 60, 70, 80 years later. And it's still under the control of a hormone. So hormones regulate our metabolic activity and our growth and reproduction, not just of the sex cells, but also all the other cells. But it's a slower response, but it's a longer term. Okay, now back to the cardiovascular system. Heart and blood vessels pumps blood. The vessels transport the blood. We send blood out to every cell in our body. Every cell in our body is connected to at least one tiny blood vessel called a capillary. And then after giving off its oxygen and nutrients to the cells, the blood is brought back to the heart to go to the lungs to get loaded up with oxygen again. And so this process happens again and again and again. Every 7/10 of a second, our heart will beat and pump blood over and over and over again. Now there's a parallel circulatory system in our bodies, because we know we have arteries and veins. You see the veins through your skin. They show up as a dark blue structure because it's the darker blood. Blood that's lower in oxygen is not bright red; it's dark red. It's like you see when you cut yourself. And when we observe it through layers of skin, regardless of color, the veins will look dark blue. That's the primary circulatory system. The other circulatory system is what's known as the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system runs a series of vessels, first of all, that run alongside the blood vessels. And it turns out that our blood vessels are not a perfectly sealed tube. They're actually very leaky. Lots of openings, lots of holes in them. And the fluid portion of our blood, what we call plasma, leaks out. It leaks out into the spaces around the cells. And we want to collect that. So we use these lymphatic vessels to collect that fluid and bring it back to the blood, back to the plasma. But before we do that, we run that plasma through a series of what we call lymph nodes. You've heard of lymph nodes. You go to your doctor and you've got an infection. The doctor palpates your neck and says, "Oh, your glands are swollen." Well, they're talking about your lymph nodes. And the lymph nodes filter that fluid coming back from around your cells to look for things to kill, because our white cells, our white blood cells, which are the infection fighters, tend to hang out in our lymph nodes, and they're looking for things to kill, because that's what they do. They kill foreign substances in our blood to protect us. And so we run all of our fluid through these lymph nodes before we return it to our plasma. So the lymphatic system is part of our overall immune system. Our tonsils are part of the lymphatic system. Our spleen is part of our lymphatic system. The appendix is part of our immune system. Not so much the lymphatic system, but definitely part of the immune system. It's not what they call a vestigial organ. Anyway, respiratory system. The nasal cavity, we breathe in through our nose. It goes down into down the back of the oral cavity, because the nasal cavity and the oral cavity are open together. And air goes into our trachea, the tube in the front of our throat, and goes down into our bronchi and into our lungs. And we grab oxygen out of that air that goes into our lungs, and we release carbon dioxide out of our blood so we can get rid of it. And part of what the respiratory system does is it cleans the air, it moistens the air, and it warms the air for us. So the air that we're getting into our lungs is pretty clean air, almost sterile air. Our digestive system. The digestive system starts at the mouth, ends at the anus. The digestive tract runs from the oral cavity to the anus, it goes through the esophagus, the stomach, the liver. It doesn't go through the liver, but the liver gets to process some of the material. The small and large intestine, the rectum, and the anus. Food that we eat gets broken down, starting in the process of digestion starts in our mouth. It continues in our stomach. It continues in the first part of our small intestine. And then for the next 20 feet or so, we're busy absorbing nutrients. We absorb nutrients, glucose and water and protein and fats from our small intestine. They go into our blood and it goes to the liver, where the liver cleans everything up before it gets sent to the heart to be sent out to the whole body. Things that we can't process moves on down through into the large intestine and is released as fecal matter. Now, the urinary system, amazing structure here, filters our blood 60 times a day. We have the kidneys, where blood goes into our kidneys, circulates through our blood. The entire blood supply will circulate through our kidneys 60 times a day. We filter out all the waste products, and we collect those waste products in the urinary bladder, and then we release it through the urethra when we have to pee. It's an amazing process. It's all passing too. We take out waste, nitrogenous waste from the breakdown of protein, for example. It forms ammonia type waste, and we release that. It also allows us to maintain our water level in our bodies. What percent of our bodies is water? Well, we're about 70% water. Well, how do we maintain the right level of water? Are we too salty or not salty enough? Because see, we're not only are we 70% water, but it's salt water, and it's like about 0.9% sodium chloride. So we're salty, and how do we regulate that salt level? How do we regulate the levels of other salt in our bodies, the sodium and chlorine and things like that? How do we regulate our acid balance? Are we too acidic? Are we too basic? That's the pH level. A lot of that, and all this gets controlled in the kidneys. Now, just a little observation here about our human digestive system. We don't like sharp objects going into our digestive system. Now, the reason I show you this is because this is one of this is what we call a non-invasive technique for examining an individual. I mean, you don't have to open them up. Now, this person obviously is going to have to get opened up because they got 87 nails in their stomach. But you can certainly see the outline and shape of the stomach. If nothing else, the nails fell into the stomach shape. The stomach is sort of J-shaped on our left-hand side, just below the bottom of our ribs. And what we're seeing here is an X-ray. Now, X-rays are great techniques, but they're not so good for soft tissue. They're good for bones. They're good for solid objects. You can see all these nails. You can see the hip bones right here. You can see the vertebrae here in the backbone. You can sort of see the outline of, this is the large intestine here that you can see over here. Can't see the structure of the stomach because, again, soft tissue doesn't show up, but you can see where the nails are. You can also see some nails down here at the end of the at the end of the large intestine too, where perhaps this individual is trying to pass them. I don't know. But the point, though, is that X-ray is only good for solid objects, things like bones, nails if someone decides to eat them too. So they look like big nails too. Anyway, so it's a non-invasive. That was the point of that. Besides it being, the shock value, 87 nails, is that it's a non-invasive technique. X-ray, the earliest non-invasive technique developed. So we can see inside the body without having to have surgery. Doesn't work well on soft tissue. We have other approaches for that, like CTs and MRIs and PET scans. Now, other organs, reproductive organs in the male and the female. The male system has the prostate, the penis, the testes, the scrotum, and the vas deferens. The purpose here is to produce sperm and testosterone and deliver it to the female reproductive tract. In the female system, we have the mammary glands, the ovaries, the uterine tubes, otherwise known as the fallopian tubes or the oviducts. 3 different names for the same structure. You're going to encounter this in terms we may have heard of in previous classes. It's still the fallopian tubes, but now we can call it uterine tubes or oviducts. So whatever, when we get into AP2 and we get into repro, you'll hear me use them all. The female reproductive system is designed for producing eggs that may be fertilized and then provide a place for the fertilized egg to grow and then be delivered. Also to feed the baby after birth. So those are the 11 big organ systems in our bodies. Now, to keep everything functioning, there are certain requirements. Oh, let's see that question. Let me see. Oh, good question. How to take notes? Well, I recommend that you print out the PDF file of the PowerPoints and then make comments, just notations on that, particularly if I emphasize something. Like when I said that carbon dioxide drives our breathing rate, that's something you're going to hear again and again. So, I mean, if I emphasize a point, on the slide, I would, jot that down next to it, and we can go back and review the your notes on the that you took and put that on the PowerPoint. And if you're not certain about some point I made, this is where the recording comes in, is really handy, because you can go to YouTube and watch the video for the recording. And the video will be listed by your class and by the date, and you'll have the link right to that video. I'll send that. I actually send those links out every day, so you can go back and watch it again if you're not certain about the point I was trying to make. But that's how I would do it, the study. I'll show you later on. Well, I can tell you right now. The extra credit is found, it's embedded in the content. They're called soft chalks. And I think the content, the very first chapter, Unit 1, on the introduction has a soft chalk there. Now, I don't think that's one for credit. If you want to check and see which ones are for credit, you can, I don't know if you can see the list or not, but if you can't see the list, I'll make sure you can, but I'll fix that for you. But they are all embedded in, you should be able to see it in grades. That's right, I have it listed in grades. So you should be able to see which ones. There's only 4 of them. I didn't do all, I think it was like 9 or 10 soft chalks, I think. I only picked 4 to do. So you can go into content and look down and see there. And I think what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll make sure I mark something that says, for grade or for extra credit or something, so that you know which ones to focus on. Did that help? Okay. Maintenance of life. Things that we have to have for these organ systems, these 11 organ systems to work. We have to, you see, good, okay. Now, we have organization, we have boundaries, metabolism, responsiveness, movement, development, growth, and reproduction. What are we talking about here? Well, let me show you where this is going. obviously organization is going from the smallest to the largest. We go from the chemical, the water, the atom, the water, the cells, up to the organism. Boundaries are very, very important. It isn't just maintaining social distancing, but it's the keeping the cells separated from each other. Each cell has a membrane around it. Each cell in our body has what we call a plasma membrane that protects it from the cell next to it. So while you may have thousands of skin cells side by side, they only connect to each other in very specific ways. They're not open to each other. So all cells are separated by their membranes, and the skin protects, and then our skin protects us from the whole outside environment. It keeps the outside away from the inside. We control access to the inside of our bodies. So that's why we're talking about boundaries. Now, metabolism is, if you would consider every chemical action that takes place in our bodies on a second by second basis. You ate something for breakfast today. You're going to eat something for lunch. The food that we eat is broken down to release the energy stored in the food. You eat something that says this contains 230 calories. That's a measure of the energy stored in that item, whether it's a Coke or it's an apple, big apple, but or a sandwich or a whatever. The energy that's in that food item has to get released into our bodies, and the process of breaking that down is a metabolic process. And there's really only two ways we do it. There's what we call catabolic reactions, where we break things down to release energy, and anabolic reactions, where we build things up. So like if you eat a lot of beef or chicken or fish or a lot of eggs, because you're exercising, you're working out, you want to build your muscles up. Well, muscles are made of protein. So the more demand you place in your muscles and the more protein you eat, the bigger your muscles are going to get. That's how, that's anabolism, building things up with small molecules to get to big things. Now, so catabolism, breakdown of large molecules. You eat an apple, and you break the apple. Your body breaks the apple down to its simplest components of water and sugar, and you get the energy from the sugar. Animalism, you take small molecules and make big ones out of it. You eat a piece of fish or chicken or beef or an egg or cheese or anything that has protein in it. Protein molecules are very small, but we start linking those protein molecules together to make larger molecules to make muscles. And so metabolic reactions allow us to break things down for energy and build things up to make the molecules that we need, protein, store energy in the form of fat. Something else we need, we have to be able to respond to a stimulus. We have to be responsive. We have to be able to respond to sounds and odors and tastes and pressure and pain. If you're cooking something on the grill and it starts really, you're cooking it up, and maybe it's chicken. Maybe you're using a smoker and you got a brisket in the smoker or a butt in the smoker, and it starts, or a turkey, and it sounds really, really good. Well, you respond to that. When you cut yourself, it hurts because you touched the top of the smoker while it was hot. It's like, ow, that hurts. That's responsiveness. Turning your head in the direction of a sound or a light or a motion. You're driving down the road and you catch something in your peripheral vision, and you react to it, or you hear a sound and you react to it. You hear the sound of a fire engine behind you, way behind you, or an ambulance or a police car. hopefully not, but you respond to that. So you respond to, the car in front of you puts on its brakes and you respond to that. That is response to a stimuli. Movement allows us to do that responsiveness. It allows us to jerk our hand back from something hot, to shiver when we're cold, to turn our head in the direction of a sound or a light or a motion. We have muscles that we have complete control over. We call those voluntary muscles, like in our arms and legs. And we have involuntary control of our muscles, the ones that surround our digestive system, that push food through the digestive system so that we don't have to think about, well, I had that donut and that apple this morning. I better get that moving on down into my stomach now because they haven't gone very far. No, our digestive tract takes care of that thanks to the involuntary muscles that surround our digestive system. So some muscles are very specialized. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart. Cardiac muscle is unique in that when the heart contracts, every cell in the heart contracts at the same time with the same force. Whereas in your arm, you're not going to use every cell. A lot of times you're only going to use the muscle cells necessary to do what you're doing, like turning a doorknob. You're not going to use every cell to its maximum strength to turn that doorknob. But in the heart, every cell contracts to its fullest strength. So our muscles then, whether they're voluntary or involuntary, are going to control our movement. We're also going to move air out of our lungs. We're going to force urine out of our bladder when we pee. So we're going to pump blood. So there's a lot of movement going on inside our bodies that we don't always think about. And then development. We grow. We go from the size of one cell when we're first fertilized, and the nucleus of the egg and the nucleus of the sperm fuse together. We grow from that, where 3.5 weeks after fertilization, our heart starts beating. We're still no bigger than the head of a pin, but when we were first fertilized, we were only the size of the pointy end of the pin. And then we grow up to our adult stature, and then we maintain that adult stature throughout the rest of our life. We develop, we go through childhood and adolescence, we hit puberty, we see rapid growth, and then we go into a maintenance mode for the rest of our lives. So our body sizes increase. We also repair and replace and maintain. We're always wearing away skin cells. We're always rebuilding our bones. Our skeleton replaces itself every 10 years. So reproduction is not only producing sex cells, it's also maintenance and repair. You ever think about a cut or an injury? What do you have to do to make your skin heal up? Nothing. Your skin's going to heal on its own. Our bones are going to grow back together again after a fracture on their own. We don't have anything to say about it, but that's what they're going to do. And so it isn't just producing sex cells like eggs and sperm. It's also about repairing and replacing and maintaining the existing cells we have. And that's a really good point. It's 12:30. That's a really good point to stop. Okay. I hope I haven't been too boring today and trying to get through some of this stuff. This afternoon in lab, if you're in the Tuesday lab, we're going to take a look at the parts of the microscope and look at some of the tissue types. The hands-on demonstrations, if you're going to be on the ground, the hands-on demonstrations I'll save for next week. So, any questions on anything? Okay, well then, thank you so much for today. Hopefully Thursday we'll get to see each other in person, or at least some of us anyway. So I guess I'll see some of you in lab then. Thanks a lot.
See you in lab.
Okay.